Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host as always. And joining me is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, you're not banned anymore, dude. How are you doing? And how was Sunday night for you? We did not get the podcast, obviously, after the game. So let the people know, man. What's the mood been like for you the last couple of days?
Oh man, it's been fantastic. So I'll start with the game and being at the game itself. So I went there with my sister, and everyone was wondering, like, is she the curse? Am I the curse? Are we both the curse? Am I getting banned? But once we got to our seats, and by the way, team store was amazing, sold out of the great stuff. I got the Sunday for the Bolts. It's for the Bolts one. I had to get an XXL for myself because everything else was sold out. So it's going to go through the wash a couple of times, which is fine. Being in those stands, and I generally don't get emotional for those moments. Like, we love the national anthem. It really means something, especially like because everyone's together in that moment, regardless of which team is playing, right? But in that moment, I sort of looked around the stands, and for the first time in what feels like a very long time for myself, because I haven't attended every game, but I've been to many, it finally felt like the stands were filled, and they were filled with blue, and it felt like 80% blue. It felt like 85% blue. And if it wasn't, I couldn't tell because everyone was so loud and so energetic. And so it felt like 100,000 Chargers fans were there with me. And it meant so much to me as someone, when we get to talk about this team on a live show like this, we've been talking about them now since 2020. And so there's a history of us talking about the transition to LA, Anthony Lynn, Brandon Staley, this new Harbaugh era. And I've had at many points had to talk about how frustrating it is to feel like I'm by myself sometimes. Against the Raiders, I genuinely almost feel like I'm by myself some weeks. So to get that feeling that all the Chargers fans who showed up gave me as a fan, it meant a ton. It really meant a lot. And the Chargers posted that, that video clip of, different reactions and hugging and dancing and singing. And I haven't felt like that in maybe a decade since the Chargers beat the Seahawks at home. And this was a 4-6 or whatever it is, Bengals team, right, on primetime. But I hadn't felt that in such a long time. So the vibes were incredible. I was emotional, and I just rode emotions for the last 48 hours, it feels like happy for sure, but just like moved. And I haven't been moved, at a football game in a while. I've been excited. I've been angry. I've been frustrated, disappointed, but moved in a way that has you like really feeling something really deep within yourself. It meant a lot. So thank you everyone for being there. And before we get to the actual football game and stuff, I do want to quickly shout out the Chargers fans who contributed to my school. I put out a wish list for my school, and we don't have a ton at our school as I start to take things over. We're at now like 15 of the items on that list have been bought in the last like 24 hours. And I really did not expect that. I don't get to see who bought everything. So I know Garrett and Leia and Bree because they've told me, or I saw their response. But I mean, I told my kids today, like, what these Chargers fans were doing, and they were floored. I mean, I'm talking like hundreds of dollars of stuff that you guys are providing to my school to help give us just a holiday. And so between that and between the game, Chargers fans, you rock.
Yeah, beautiful stuff all around. All of the different videos from Sunday night are fantastic, and some of them, and yours included, made the Chargers video. Today there was another video somebody tagged us in, and the guy was crying, like literal tears, watching the end of that game. And I apologize, I don't recall your name, and that's my mistake. I could I'll shout you out later on Twitter and things like that. But the emotion from this game has just been so much fun to see. The responses, I've kind of joked about this before, but like, my family and friends like only text me about the Chargers when they lose. But this time they all texted me. We're like, oh my gosh, like this is a unique experience for you, right? And it's like, yes, it is. Just because we're not used to these kind of things, I talked about this on Sunday, but beating teams that they're supposed to beat is a new thing for us as fans. And now Jim Harbaugh is defeating the term Chargery. Like the vibes are incredibly high right now. And, we'll see what happens on Monday night and the rest of the season, but it's impossible not to feel like this team is on the right track. And I've had people here locally at work or at my church say like, hey man, like your team like finally looks like they have it together. Like they finally look like they have a plan and they finally look like they have an identity and a culture. And it's truly like great to see. But from a fan perspective, I've attended some games that have been like 60-40, maybe like 65-35. Like a couple of years ago, I went to the Browns game that was a shootout, and that was like probably 60-40, and that was great to see. But the Browns fans were also a lot louder than most of the away fans. But to see it over the last few weeks turn into an actual like legit home field advantage for the Chargers is just, it's truly needed. And these players who have been on the team for a long time, who haven't really had that, Joey's obviously the last San Diego Charger on the team, and obviously Denzel Perryman as well, but they were at the end of the San Diego era, right? Like they didn't get like the true San Diego prime, if you will. And Derwin, who's been on the team forever, he's had to deal with the Carson situation and now the beginning of the SoFi situation. And as Jacob points out, it sounded like legitimately loud on TV. When the Bengals had the ball, it was loud, and the Chargers, were doing defense chants, and you could hear all of the noise, and the Bengals had to take a timeout at one point. So it's been building and building, and I hope that it continues to build. Obviously, there's still some room for improvement. There's a lot of empty seats at SoFi Stadium last night or on Sunday night, but the presence was there, the noise was there, and it's been great to see. I have received a request to mention on the show that when the Chargers have the ball, we're supposed to be quiet. You want the Chargers offense to be in a rhythm, and
Correct.
sometimes that can be a little confusing for newer fans, and I totally get it. You yell your voices hard out when the Chargers are on defense. When they are on offense, sit down, enjoy the show, watch Justin Herbert, cheer for the loud plays. Obviously, by all means, go right ahead. But we are only trying to distract the Bengals and opposing offenses. When the Chargers have offense, let's take it down a notch a bit.
Yeah, that was I think the first time they did it was, let's go Chargers. And I'm like, we're all on the stands, like doing the Peyton Manning, like, shut up, but it's like, you love it. It's great. But, the good news is like, it was just all emotion and people just didn't know what to do with it. So they're like, yeah, like just yelling and screaming at whatever, even if it was like a TV time, so it was awesome. Yeah. Tell the fans they're too loud. We've come so far. Yeah, man. I mean, it's awesome. And it's not like one of those, moments where it's like, oh, the fans must have been too loud, but it was the opposing fans. Like, no, it really was the Chargers fans on the home side chanting MVP and let's go Chargers and cheering for whatever. Going for it on fourth down. I don't know why on fourth down everyone stands up and yells as loud as they can. Like it's the most quiet you should probably be, but everyone on fourth down for the Chargers gets up and cheers. But it was, the vibes were awesome.
It's a good problem to have for us as Chargers fans, right? We're not used to it, but I just it's great to see, man. Like there's been some games obviously that have been very positive from a fan perspective. Like even the Sunday night game against the Chiefs, like you could tell that like the Chargers fans showed up for that game. But now we're getting this new influx of Chargers fans because the team is successful and hopefully they're able to continue to be successful under Jim Harbaugh. Yeah. And people are buying in. And we've seen, training camp has been a huge success previously. And like, again, there's been moments, but LA needs consistency to buy into teams. And we've seen that even for the Rams, who have been and won a Super Bowl in this era. So just wonderful to see. If you're new to the show, welcome. This is obviously a space where we're going to talk about the film takeaways today, but continue to tell your friends, man. It's a great time to be a Chargers fan. It's a great time to hop on the bandwagon. Yep. It's a great time to be a Chargers fan. And Monday night is a huge game. Sunday night was a huge win, and we are going to talk about it. as always, our show is brought to you guys by our friends over at Prize Picks. I was one Gus Edwards carry away from going 5 for 5 in my lineup today. The good news there is that Prize Picks does not discriminate for one specific miss. You can still win a flex play on Prize Picks if you go 4 of 5, whereas if you do a traditional parlay and you don't go 5 for 5, you lose. So that's my encouragement for you guys to go check out prizepicks.com/guilty and be able to get in on the action with the best and easiest way to do daily fantasy sports. Tyler and I obviously have had a lot of fun doing it for Charger specific things, but they have the whole shebang for you. Hockey, NFL, NBA, whatever floats your boat, they have you covered. That is prizepicks.com/guilty to be able to use that link. So we do really appreciate Prize Picks and appreciate you guys for jumping in on it. All right, let's talk about the film takeaways. Again, huge win for the Chargers. Their playoff chances are above 80%. I mean, basically any kind of graphic that you're looking at, I believe Next Gen Stats has their chances at like 92%. So it was a big, big deal. You know, the Colts are kind of like coming back, but for the most part, it does kind of seem like it's trending towards the Chargers and Broncos and kind of vying for the 6-7 seed, maybe the 5 seed. We'll see what happens specifically on Monday night. So huge win for the Chargers against the Bengals. And we are going to dive into our film takeaways as we do every single Tuesday. Let's start with some unsung heroes. Again, this is a space that we dedicate to a player who didn't get a ton of shine after the game. That could have been by us. You know, we did talk about them on the recap or in the media. They're not talking about enough in the media. And so we want to give some praise to players who are doing the dirty work, players who are having strong performances and not getting talked about. And that's where we dedicate this space to. So, Tyler, who is your unsung hero of the week?
I'm going to go with a coach and what it all represents. And I will go with Steve Clinkskale and the way he's been working with these defensive backs and how every single freaking DB that has touched the field is good or is contributing. Or like, what is the drop off? How many corners do the Chargers have to lose before we see a significant drop off? He's been outstanding. Yes, of course, Jesse Minter is a big part of it as the coordinator, but I got to give him a shout out too. We talk about Jesse Minter a ton, but the way every corner has been playing, we'll talk about these corners. I got to give it up to Clinkskale. And if I had to pick a particular moment that encapsulates it completely and perfectly, Eli Apple is activated off the practice squad. He gets 3 coverage reps. One of them is one of the best pass breakups of the game on the outside by himself. Like this guy, not that Eli Apple is some rookie who's never played. He's played plenty of football, but this is a guy they just picked up on the practice squad now, has been elevated for this game. Oops, there's some injuries. Okay, walk in there against the Bengals. What are you going to do? Make a great play. I mean, it's just a great rep from him. And it was again, three coverage reps, but one of them was a pass breakup. That's all you can ask for, man. Like to just walk in the middle of the game and fill in for whoever was hurt at that time. I couldn't remember if it was one or both defensive backs, but just that is incredible. Clinkskale as a defensive coach, as a DB's coach, I think deserves a shout out here, and all the DBs underneath him.
Yeah, I mean, they had 5 cornerbacks take snaps. DiCaprio Boodle played a few snaps a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, the individual development from Tariq Still and Cam Hart deserves a lot of credit. Christian Fulton, which we can talk about him maybe in a different space, but he had a rough start. I think he gave a couple important catches early, but then he had 2 great pass breakups.
So
he had another awesome, fantastic rep against Jamar Chase that kind of forced a third down. The corners have been locked in, and I think Minter deserves a lot of credit for devising the plans. But throughout the week, your position coach is the one that's getting you like dialed into things, and for the corners, that's obviously Clinkskale. So it's been extremely positive. Eli Apple coming in against the Browns was able to just like be the motion indicator, whether it was man or zone, and then dropped into a Tampa 2 concept, and it would just look like normal like Chargers defense, right? And then this week, going up against his former team, I'm sure he was pretty juiced for it. But this is Jamar Chase and T. Higgins we're talking about, and Andre Yoshiwas is a good receiver, and Jermaine Burton is a 3rd-round receiver who could have been a 1st-round pick if he wasn't kind of an off-field case. So extremely talented Bengals offensive weaponry, and Eli Apple comes in. It was only 5 plays, 6 plays, something like that. And he looked like he belonged. He looked like he was ready to make an impact. So Clinkskale deserves a lot of credit for that. A lot of people have kind of asked, what happens if Jesse Minter leaves? Clinkskale is probably the internal candidate that is next in line. He was co-defensive coordinators with Jesse Minter at Michigan. He's been a previous defensive coordinator as well as special teams coordinator. And so he would be the next person in line internally. And I think this is a great place to start the show because we've praised Jesse Minter so much. And Ryan Ficken gets a lot of praise on this show, obviously. But position coaches matter a ton, specifically in the secondary and like wide receiver and running back. And Clinkskale is obviously showing his worth with the way that these corners are playing right now.
Yeah, he really has. And you could point at any of these corners, really. I know Asante Samuel Jr. hasn't played in a bit, but any of these guys, the way Fulton has changed his entire career, how we all feel completely differently today about Tarheeb Still than we did 3-4 months ago. I mean, Tarheeb Still towards the end of the game, I think it was tied at the time, 1-on-1 with Jamar Chase, gives up a little bit of space and has to rally and get back to the sideline, get back against Jamar Chase, pass breakup down there. And they missed the field goal after that. Like they might have scored a touchdown or the field goal would have been easier, but still walks in there. Huge critical moment. Pass breakup against Jamar Chase. Like Clinkskale, what they're doing with these DBs, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. They play a lot of DBs right now because Derwin James, they're trying to get him in the slot and like dime backer. They're playing a ton of dime package. And so you can't do that without the kind of cornerbacks and coaching that they are getting right now. And like Tyler mentioned, more on that group later. All right. My unsung heroes of the week. Poona Ford gets a lot of attention, but I do want to give him some more today. And then Tahir Tart as well in this kind of conversation. I've talked about Tart a few times on the show. He needs to be a starter. Otito Ogbonia is not taking the kind of step that we were kind of hoping for. And Tahir Tart is just consistently making an impact. Like at the goal line, he just toasts Alex Kappa right off the line and gets a crazy good tackle for loss. There was a simulated pressure that the Chargers ran, and Tahir Tart dropped into coverage, as he's done a couple of times. There was a different run rep where he just completely anchors down against the double team, and it left Deion Henley completely free to go get a tackle for loss. He's been so consistently impactful for this team that his snaps need to like ratchet up a lot. He's been fantastic for them. I've kind of hinted at that, and I'm like firmly on the table that Tahir Tart needs to be a starter for this defense going forward, because when he's out there, it just looks different. And then Poona Ford, man, like I didn't realize this, but he is top 5 among all interior defensive linemen in ESPN's pass rush win rate. And he's like 12th in PFFs. And you see like glimpses of it every now and then. And when he does turn it on, like his reps are just eye-popping. And he has the weirdest, funniest body type of a nose tackle because he's 5'11", but he uses his leverage and his quickness so well. And there are 5 or 6 times a game where I'm like standing up like, okay, Poona, like let's go. And then the tape is fantastic. So people who are kind of watching the Chargers defense and wondering like where the improvement is coming from, specifically against the run, those two have a huge part in it, particularly Poona Ford because he is a starter. But those two are allowing the linebackers and the safeties to play clean and free football and flow to the football. And they're also making splash plays very consistently. The tape was it was so much fun to watch for those two. The tape was a great watch across several fronts, and we'll dive into them. But Poona and Tahir, because they play defensive tackle, they don't get a lot of pub, and they're run stuffing defensive tackles, but they have been fantastic additions for this Chargers team.
So freaking good. I'm impressed by how often, and maybe Poona in particular, can just split double teams. You mentioned the hype combo. It's so odd watching him because if I thought of him as a prospect and you asked me, hey, here's the film and he's playing, LSU or Alabama or whatever, how do you grade him? How do you evaluate him? And I don't know. And clearly it's an outlier. He is 0.18th percentile or whatever. not even like 1 percentile, like a tenth, almost 2/10 of a percentile for his height for defensive tackles. But it's so interesting to watch a player with clear deficits physically, but he makes up for them in different ways or uses it to his advantage. Like on paper, that is a short, very short defensive tackle, and it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so I'll use it for leverage. And what I'll do is I'll be so active and good with my hands that I'll get under you and beat your wrists every time. I'll get under your pads every time. Okay, well, you're 306 pounds. Like, are you going to be much of a rusher? Fine. I'm just going to run my ass off every play. And like the fact that this guy is that short, but 306 pounds, running and being as quick as he is, it's insane. Like it's motor, it's technique with Ford. I love watching him. Like you said, every game you stand up and you go, oh my God, there's the Puna Ford play. If it's an interception or a sack. I mean, just everything he's doing is fantastic. I absolutely love these two defensive tackles, or nose tackles, I guess I could say. And I'm all for more Tart snaps. I don't know if Otito came back in the game after getting hurt. I wasn't watching live. Do you recall if Otito came back in the game? Because he did get hurt on a tackle.
I mean, he was the one who committed the roughing the passer penalty.
Oh, yes.
So
yes, he did come back in the game.
So Tart's around 25 snaps a game right now. And Otito's at 30. So it's better. But I still think that needs to be flipped. Morgan Fox played 45, and Puna Ford played 45. So that seems to be kind of their preference, is that you know, Puna and Fox, which makes sense because Fox gets all the passing down snaps. When the Chargers get into obvious passing situations, they do the 3 edge rushers and Fox like almost 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, but you know, Tart to me he flashes so much on tape when you're watching. And it's not always like he's making the play. Like I think Puna is making more splash plays, but Tart, his ability to anchor against double teams is crazy to me sometimes. And so he's doing all the little things that you want of a, you know, rotational defensive tackle. And it's just been great to see. Puna, to me, like this is a must resign. Like they have to keep Puna Ford around. And of all of the 1-year veterans that they signed, I mean, J.K. Dobbins has a legit argument, but to me, it's like Puna Ford is potentially the best at his position when you like compare him to his peers. So Puna to me is like you got to keep this guy around because he's playing fantastic, and he's the key. Like he's the key to everything that they're doing because he's the one that is consistently playing the run at such a high level. Yeah,
he's an easy re-sign. I love that he finally. I don't know if he does this frequently, but he posted like, you know, everybody should have kind of seen this coming, but they didn't because they didn't believe me. They thought I fell off. You know, this shouldn't be a surprise to any of you, but a lot of you thought I fell off. And that really was, I kind of get the sentiment to a certain extent. I didn't expect this, and we were both very positive with Puna Ford. I didn't expect to be seeing what I see every day, every game on film. He gets, you know, we do talk about Ford quite a bit. We've talked about Tart off and on, kind of depending, mostly just asking for more snaps. But I'm happy to talk about Ford every single day because he's always out there performing well. I don't even think he's had a bad game. Maybe he just is more impactful in the run, but we don't see it some games live. But he's never had a bad game. I love watching him on film.
Yeah, so just to wrap up the Puna Ford conversation. So he's a great run defender, right? He already has 3 sacks, which is tied for the most in his career. He's had 3 sacks a couple of times in Seattle. He's got 16 pressures. So his career high in pressures was 28 back in 2020. So he's on track to clear that number. He's on track to clear the career high in sacks. So he's performing at such a high level. And Mike Elston, again, position coach, deserves a lot of credit for kind of bringing the best out of him. And somebody in the chat earlier mentioned, you know, Harbaugh is really empowering his position coaches to go shine and help develop these players. So they deserve a ton of credit for that. Yeah. Before we get to our narratives of the week, I want to give a big shout out to Don Cheto here, who sent in a super chat and says that he just got his YouTube recap and spent over 1,000 minutes listening to the show. He says, thank you for all you guys do. What is your ceiling for Chargers going forward is his main question. But Don Cheto, everybody else that consistently is in here in the super chats, the fans who obviously donated to Tyler's school, it seriously means a lot. People have been kind of sometimes shy to like come up to me at games and stuff like that. Like, please, like, come say hello at games when you see us. Like, it really does mean a lot. And we love all of the support that we get from the community that we've built up. So Don Cheto, everybody else that consistently supports the show, thank you guys for all that you do for our show as well.
I don't even know what 1,000 minutes is in terms of episodes, but that's incredible. I've had people DM me, like Leia mentioned, like she's been watching from start to finish every podcast that we do. And people are saying like, oh, I've been here since 2020. You helped me get me through the pandemic, stuff like that. It's incredible. I really do appreciate all the support. Truly, we just jump on here and we talk about football, but I love this space. I love our specific community. It's awesome.
Yeah, 100%. There are other super chats, and we will get to those specific questions. Colin Camp, who just joined as a new member, also said the guys are the best in the biz, period. Appreciate you guys sincerely so much for your support. All right, narratives of the week is our next segment. We highlight, specific player developments or conversations about like playoff futures, stuff like that. For this team, and we can answer the question from Don Cheto there about the ceiling of this team. But for me, the biggest narrative I have from watching the tape this week is we saw a big time flash of the ceiling of Lad McConkey as well as Cam Hart. And Lad obviously gets a lot of the pub because he had the game winning, or not game winning, I should say. He had the dagger receptions. It was his second year 100-yard game, and he deserves a ton of credit. The way that the Chargers have evolved his role throughout the season, it's been fantastic to see. They're putting more on his plate every single week. The relationship between him and Justin Herbert is getting better every single week. We are seeing back shoulder throws. We are seeing anticipatory throws. We are seeing them go to Lad in key third downs. Obviously, in a 2-minute situation, their two biggest pass plays were to Lad. He's becoming a legitimate go-to wide receiver. And I want to highlight this because we all watched the game. We all talked about Lad, but we are still seeing comments online and in this chat sometimes that the Chargers need a wide receiver one. And I strongly believe that Lad is that wide receiver one that everybody is clamoring for. Yes, he's not a 6'3" X receiver because he's 6 foot even and he plays mostly in the slot. But the way that football has evolved, you don't need that traditional X receiver anymore. As long as you have a guy who can get the volume to put up your big receiver seasons. And the numbers that he is putting up for any receiver, period, are fantastic. But for a rookie scale, for him to be averaging 2.4 yards per route run, for his success rate against man coverage to be above 75%, 5 yards after the catch per reception, he's doing all the route tree. His route tree is one of the best route trees in the NFL. He doesn't do any Mickey Mouse route concepts. He doesn't get the bubble screens. He doesn't get the drags. He doesn't get, any of these boring get the ball in his hands touches, which I kind of wish he would, but he doesn't. He gets all of the vertical, complex route concepts. And to me, this is a guy who is a legit wide receiver one in the future because he's going to continue to get better. He's going to continue to develop that trust with Justin Herbert. He's going to continue to have coaches evolve his role and get him touches. Lad, his ceiling to me is a wide receiver one ceiling, and we're seeing that come to fruition. He is second in the league in receiving yards over the last 4 weeks. He has 4 touchdowns. He's a threat in the red zone. There's no weaknesses that we're seeing on tape. The numbers are fantastic. We'll get to Cam Hart in a second here, but Lad McConkey to me, narrative of the week is that Lad is a true wide receiver one from here on out.
It's pretty rare company where he's headed towards, and part of that's just efficiency. And that was kind of our pitch through most of the season so far is, well, on a per play basis, he's great, but he's on pace for over 1,000 receiving yards now. And I certainly think he'll get there based on the way he's playing. It's not like the defenses that are coming up are, all world defenses, and there will be some shootouts, I think, as early as next week. But the guys that have broken 1,000 receiving yards the last 5 seasons, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Puka Nacua.
That's a pretty good list.
That's a pretty freaking good list, man. Those guys are wide receiver ones, and most of them, at the exception of Nacua, were taken in the first round. Was A.J. Brown a second-round pick?
He was.
Fine. Most of those guys...
But he was a first-round talent.
Yeah, that's what it was. Regardless, that's some pretty good company to be in. For him to be getting the volume now. It's funny. I don't know what the number is, but Chargers fans, you see the number of targets and obviously the yards and the receptions. And all we can say is more, more Ladd McConkey. How much more can we give Ladd McConkey to do? I don't know what his long-term future will be in terms of a wide receiver one, and then what it really means to be a wide receiver one, because there are wide receiver ones, and then there's a Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase wide receiver one. No, he'll never get there, but I do think he can pace an offense and be a very, 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 very strong wide receiver, a lower end wide receiver one. I'm not opposed, as the chat seems to be, to adding more players, to adding a tight end one for sure. I think that would be fantastic. But Ladd McConkey, man, we sat here on draft night and they moved up. We kind of thought it'd be either for one of the centers or a receiver. When they took McConkey, I think we were all pretty thrilled. Sure, there were some risks, but at the end of the day, it was a great prospect, a really great prospect who could check a lot of boxes. And to see what he's doing now, I mean, Hilton is not a bad corner as far as I'm aware. I don't know if he's having a down season, but Hilton's a pretty good corner. And McConkey, he must have thought it was his wedding because he bought him a blender for his registry. The poor guy was out there just running around. The out and up was fantastic. The second or third catch that he had, just fantastic stuff. Ladd McConkey was just, it feels good to be right,
It does feel good to be right.
We did the Quentin Johnson thing, and we were not we got it. We kind of get the idea, but we weren't all in as fans. With McConkey, we're yes, good one, a pick. And it feels good that he's on pace. I know there's only played 2 games, or he's played 2 more games, but still ahead of Malik Neighbors in receiving yards, ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr., ahead of Romo Dunze. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. If you, I tweeted out the statistics of where he ranks among receivers with at least 35 targets. But if you filter it to just the receivers with 50% of their team's targets, which is these are the team's wide receiver ones. He is, let me make sure I get all of these right. He is 11th in yards per reception. He is 10th in receiving grade, which I know PFF grades are kind of wishy-washy for some people, but it's worth noting. And it helps push the agenda, certainly. In yak per reception, he's 7th. He's right behind Jamar Chase, believe it or not, in yak per reception. In yards per route run, he is 12th, right behind T. Higgins and Chris Godwin and Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown, etc. In terms of missed tackles forced, he is 11th there, right ahead of Tyreek Hill and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Drake London and Devontae Smith. In first downs created, he is 14th. The numbers are fantastic. However you cut them, he is doing wonderfully in his rookie season. Some comments here from the chat. Brett McCall, Ladd is running choice routes already. He spoke about this on the Pat McAfee show. For a rookie wide receiver to be running choice routes, that's crazy. It's crazy that he is able to do this with Justin Herbert already. Not many rookie receivers come in the league and instantly run choice routes with their quarterbacks. Seth said that Ladd was way open on all 3 third down QJ almost to start the second half. He's consistently getting open, and I feel once a week I turn on the tape and he's making a defensive back fall over. The route running is fantastic. Rich, when will teams start doubling and bracketing Lad? They're already doing that. There are several times a game where they're running Lad on like on a dig or on a bender or whatever, and he's taking 2 guys with him. He's taking 3 guys with him sometimes. He's getting that attention for sure. From NSN, how much was it due to opponents' miscues, weaknesses for Lad? Can he do it versus tougher defenses? I understand the sentiment that the Bengals defense is overall not great. Yeah. Mike Hilton is a great slot corner. Alontae Taylor from the Saints, a fantastic slot corner. The Broncos didn't have Patrick Surtain in that game. They still had some really good other corners. So Lad's doing it against everybody. Like, this is not just a case of bad defenses. So it's been great to see. Lad's been fantastic, and I think this is only going to continue to get better because he's played 10 games, and one of the games he was very clearly not healthy. So the more he gets in with Justin Herbert, the more he gets in with the offense, it's just going to go up and up and up. And I think that ceiling is tremendously high right now.
Yeah, it's super high. I felt pretty good about the season as is, especially after that 100-yard game. By the way, nice to see one in person, and it actually exists. I can see it actually exists. It was, a tree fell in the forest, and I was there to hear it crash.
Yeah.
But you look at okay, can he do it against the great defenses like in the NFL? He still had 67 yards and a touchdown against the Chiefs, and his quarterback could barely throw the football, and they had
that was Trent McDuffie.
That's a good. The Chiefs are like, we can all agree the Chiefs defense is pretty good, if not like one of the best defenses, most talented defenses this year, and he did pretty good. That touchdown catch was awesome. That yak play for 40 or whatever it was awesome. He just wins in so many different ways: speed, twitch, route running, everything, and just like the out and up, and just like to turn and the contested catch towards us in the end zone. We were losing our minds. Like Lad McConkey, man, it's awesome. I'm not gonna say like he's the next Keenan Allen, like because like that's big shoes to fill. That's a very long career, but he is in terms of like the go-to guy, the route runner, the clutch guy. Yeah, that is in that respect, he's the next Keenan Allen.
Yeah, last thing about Lad is Lad the potential rookie of the year. I think he has. This is from Reality Check. I think he would have a legitimate case if he can get to 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
Well, this is a quarterback award, unfortunately, and there are some good rookie quarterbacks this year.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels is leading a potential playoff team. Bo Nix is leading a potential playoff team and starting to kind of figure things out. If Caleb can turn things around, he's another guy that can put up big numbers at any time. So it is a choice, but also Lad doesn't have the best rookie of the year case on his team, but unfortunately offensive rookie of the year awards do not go to offensive linemen. So
yeah, I know. I think I think we're at a whopping 12 pressures allowed or something on this season. Like we could just talk. We spent the whole show talking about Joe Alt, but Lad McConkey. He'll be on the better team than like a Brian Thomas or a Brock Bowers, who again, once again, it just makes me angry that Tom Telesco gets freaking Brock Bowers. AFC West, man, full of great tight ends.
Yeah, Brock Bowers on pace to break Puka's record for receptions as a
with
rookie.
Gardner Minshew
and no other good receivers around him to take attention away.
No, crazy.
Okay, I hate to like steal this topic, right? But I have to talk about Cam Hart because I think his injury completely changed the complexity of that game, and they were having him shadow Jamar Chase and press Jamar Chase and get up in his grill, which is, again, crazy to say out loud that 5th-round pick Cam Hart was shadowing Jamar Chase, who is currently leading the league in receiving. When he got injured, they completely changed their game plan. It was a lot more like soft zone. It was a lot more, cover 6. It was completely different. And it makes sense if you don't have a guy who can press him to make those changes. But if Cam Hart finishes that game, I don't think the Bengals come back. Like maybe they come back and make it interesting, but they don't come back to make it 27-27 because he got injured like midway through the third quarter. He took a hard hit, and credit to the Chargers DBs. They did play, were a couple bad plays from Jasir Taylor, but for the most part, the DBs played pretty well. But it completely changed the game. And this was the first time that we've seen them allow Cam Hart to get up in a receiver's grill and press. And he was fantastic. I tweeted a couple of these reps out, but at the goal line, he presses Jamar Chase and he plays physical through the catch point. There was a cover 2 tackle in space on Chase Brown. There was a different time where he follows Jamar Chase into the slot and runs the route for Jamar Chase. And a worse quarterback would have thrown an interception because Cam Hart was right there. But Joe Burrow is a great quarterback and he dirted the pass, like rightfully so. And Cam Hart was consistently in the right position in Jamar's hip pocket. He played outstanding. And I think it's just going to continue to improve. Again, we don't know what his status is for Monday night with the concussion, but his injury changed everything for them. And it's, again, it feels nice to be right. But Cam Hart showing a potential ceiling here where this is a guy who can go be physical against opposing wide receiver ones. And it's not always going to be perfect right now because he is a rookie corner. But if they can get that kind of play out of him, it's only going to make a great passing defense that much better.
It was really a cool story when he jumped in against the Broncos and played well, and then against the Cardinals. And you're like, okay, there's definitely something here. What he did on Sunday, as you mentioned, talking about ceiling, really just cements his status as a 2025 starter.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to say that he should be their CB1 because that's a lot of expectations. We've seen, ups and downs from rookie seasons to sophomore years, but he's a starter and he's going to be at worst a great CB2. And maybe even what we were hoping for Asante Samuel Jr. to eventually become, because Cam Hart doesn't just have like the coverage skills, which are evident, and the physicality and the pressing is all there. Once a game, he's putting someone in the turf, and it's nasty and it's mean, and it's really unlike a lot of corner play that we see. It's rare in college to watch a ton of DBs and to find guys that actually want to go hit and are physical. But like every other game, there's there's the Cam Hart sending someone to their grave, hit on a guy. He's phenomenal. And it really did change the game. I mean, when Fulton left and then Hart left, all of a sudden, the Bengals are coming back. And you can, and honestly, watching the defensive film, I don't know if you feel the same way, but like, I wasn't as bummed about the Bengals coming back. It really felt like, our corners are hurt, and we're down. We were already hurt corners. Now we're down some corners, and the Bengals, Jamar Chase is pretty freaking good. But Cam Hart, what he's doing, and specifically how I think he fits just perfectly with Christian Fulton, the best of what he does, and those pass breakups, it's beautiful that the Chargers found themselves a great starter, and it wasn't even the first corner they picked in the 5th round. And then that guy's going to be a good starter too, I think. So it's just Cam Hart has, I don't want to say saved their season, but because the defense is playing great regardless, but like his play has been tremendous.
Yeah. And I think it gives them a ton of flexibility for the draft, as some people are pointing out in the chat, because heading into the season, I was like, okay, next year, like they have to go find a legit cornerback upgrade. And I still think they could stand to go spend a high draft pick or spend some financial capital on one, because Christian Fulton has played great, but he was dealing with this hamstring injury during this game. Like he had a heating pad on the hamstring the entire time he was on the bench. He wasn't able to play 100% of the snaps. He was in and out of the lineup. So there's real concern about Fulton being able to like play the rest of the season for me, unfortunately. But when he's out there, he's played really, really well. So I'm not like anti bring Fulton back, but having Cam Hart show this against Jamar Chase is just like an incredible sign. It's one thing if he's doing this against, going back to the Broncos game, like he was doing this against Devon Vele, but like Devon Vele is a 7th round rookie receiver. Like it's very different to do this against Jamar Chase, who's has a legit argument for best receiver in the league. So it's going to give them a ton of flexibility. And I think Jesse Minter can start running a lot more man concepts because Cam Hart can play this way. And this is what his defense wants to be. They want to play more man coverage. If you look at Mike McDonald's defense, where they share a lot of similarities, Mike McDonald's running man coverage at like the 2nd highest rate in the league. Granted, he has Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon. So if Cam Hart can allow them to play more man coverage, it's going to allow the Chargers to crank up those blitz styles. It's going to allow them to let Derwin play more free, and everything just kind of fall into place here as they go on this playoff stretch run. So again, Cam Hart's a 5th round rookie. I don't want to put like CB1 expectations on him. They have some difficult matchups coming up.
Yeah.
But it's so encouraging to see this kind of performance against Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati Bengals. It was just a treat to watch. I zeroed in on it like right away because it was the most difficult matchup of the day. And I was expecting him on T. Higgins, and then they would, kind of have coverage help for Jamar or with somebody else. He was one-on-one with Jamar Chase like 6 or 7 times and had fantastic reps. So it was just great to see.
Yeah. So I guess I'll continue with that then. And we talked about freeing up Derwin James. I really think we have talked about so many players to start the season on defense, and it was kind of your usual suspects. Khalil Mack, we talked about him probably every week. We've talked about Ford quite a bit. We talked about Elijah Molden quite a bit. Fulton, Hart when he started playing. But it really the last few weeks, but really I guess maybe specifically against the Bengals, this was the other guy starting to really round into form and really take this defense. And I know that they almost blew a lead or didn't blow a lead, depending on how you want to phrase it, for the love of God. But Thule and Derwin are elevating at the right time right now. And this team will get Khalil Mack back at some point, if not this week, against the Ravens. It seems like that's the case. But both of those guys in particular are trending in the right direction right now. A lot of the defense has been good, but we're always like, where's Derwin? Where's Thule? We were really worried about Thule because, or I should say fans are worried about Thule because of the lack of pass rush. Where'd that go? Where's that guy from last year? He's here. Watching Thule, and I'll get to Derwin as well. He's been that guy. I mean, he leads the NFL in pressures and sacks the last 4 weeks. And you asked me the other week, like, what has changed for Thule? I really don't know. I joked that he had a bad game against the Cardinals and said, never mind, never again. And he's just been the best edge rusher in the league, practically, at least production-wise, the past 4 weeks.
Yeah.
4th in pass rush productivity, 10th in win rate, 7th in stops. He's just murdering guys. I mean, and against the Bengals, you had mentioned like that tool bag is starting to get deep for Thule. I mean, there's a spin move in there, there's a long arm, there's a rip, there's a stunt. Like there's so much he can do. And then there's a run game. Oh, hello, let's just use power. I mean, Amarius Mims is a very, very talented player, not refined yet. And I'm starting to think that the Bengals are where like linemen go to die. But still, like he was a very, very talented player and one of the most athletically gifted linemen that we've seen over the last 5 years. And not that it was specifically against Mims all the time, but Mims kind of went through hell.
Yeah.
To put it into perspective, Mims had his worst game of the season, which is his career, his rookie season. His PBE was 93.7, which is only 0.6% away from Senio Kelamete's number against the Broncos in 2021. So
full circle, baby.
Full circle, baby. Take that. That's what it feels like. But that's how good Thule was against this first round pick. A very, very talented player. He's tremendous. But then Derwin James. We've talked about good Derwin James games. The Steelers, even though with the suspension, the hit, I thought that was a great physical game. And there was a game we both agreed that he was like an unsung hero of that game. Perfect. This game, and I didn't appreciate it as much until I watched the film. This was like the Derwin, I do everything and I'm going to do it well game. I thought what he was doing, I was stunned by how many plays he was making, or just being in the right position where he has to throw the ball in the dirt or a pass breakup. He had 3 pressures. He almost beat Cody Ford with like a pure pass rush move on the outside. Like he was this close away from bending and ripping around Cody Ford, a tackle, sort of a guard, but a tackle, for a pressure or a quarterback hit. I mean, he was tremendous in this game, cleaning up plays. It's 3rd and long, got to rally, make a tackle. He led the team in tackles. I thought this was if you were waiting and you've been waiting for that, Derwin James does a lot of things and does them well game. This was it. For him to do this specifically against the Bengals was huge for this team. He was awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on both of those fronts. I think Derwin, it, I think a lot of us, and myself included here, we kind of underestimated like the adjustment that this coaching staff would have with a player like Derwin James. And they've preached versatility and flexibility, but it's a different thing when it comes to using a player like Derwin James, because you kind of have to pick your spots with how to use him and how much you like. You don't want to do what Brandon Staley did, where he's doing literally every position every single game. Like, you want to be able to find a role for him. And they started out in like the first couple of games, he was playing a ton of free safety, which makes sense. Like, he's the most athletic player on the field. Like, let's put him in the center field and let's have him kind of roam around and, you know, protect us on the deep end. And that can make sense. But now he's playing in the slot. He's playing dime linebacker for them. He's covering tight ends. He's playing the run. He's rushing the passer. And he's doing all of those things really, really well. There was a time where the Bengals ran a counter concept with Alex Kappa trying to pull around the edge, and Derwin was the guy that they were going after. And Derwin James stood him up at the line of scrimmage, set the edge, blew the play up, and that allowed Deion Henley to come from the backside and chase Brown down. No pun intended. So Derwin, he was doing all the little things. He was making the splash plays. You know, he's just been building and building and building over the last few weeks. And Jacob pointing out right on time, he's looking like old Derwin. I think this stretch of 3 games is probably the best stretch of 3 games we've seen him play since 2021. I think he's playing at that high of a level. The coverage snaps are outstanding. You know, he's erasing Mike Gesicki. Like, did anybody hear Mike Gesicki's name called? And again, it's Mike Gesicki. He's not like a great tight end, but he's a key piece of that Bengals offense, right? And then he's playing slot reps against Andre Yosevas, who's like an up-and-coming slot receiver. So he played outstanding. The splash plays were there. The smart plays were there. And then just like his leadership, man, like it's just such a treat to see. You don't really get a feel for how the defense is communicating on the broadcast tape. But when we pop on the all 22, Derwin is talking the entire time. And he doesn't call the plays, that's Deion rule. But Derwin is talking to the edge rushers. He's talking to Deion. He's talking to the safeties behind him. He's talking to the corners. He's talking the entire play of every single play. Like, he is just doing a great job communicating, leading this defense, leading this team. And it's been great to watch him get back to his usual self.
Yeah, it feels great. There's arguably no more fun player when he's on, other than maybe Justin Herbert. Watching Derwin James when he's on is a freaking blast. And I think Chargers fans loved Derwin coming out of the draft when they obviously winning, all pro or second team all pro, whatever it was, his rookie season. And we were kind of let down by the play over the last couple of years. To see him get back to something like this, and if he can sustain this, it's beautiful. Like, I just had an absolute ball watching it. I didn't really notice him as much while I was sitting in the stands, but watching him on film, I would argue he was almost the MVP of the game, considering of the defense, given how much he was doing.
Yeah, and he's a huge piece of why the pass defense has been the way that it is, because he allows everybody else to just kind of take a beat, and there's not a ton of pressure on all of them. It's been wonderful to see.
Yeah.
Okay. Our last segment here is real or fake. We spent a lot of time talking about Lad, and that's my mistake, but I'm not apologizing because it's fun. Sure. So Tyler, for you, let's start with what is real this week. Where do you want to start here?
Yeah, I really think this offensive line is starting to really elevate itself, and that's at least true statistically. Only 13 pressures allowed and 1 sack the last 2 games. This is a far cry from like the 18 and 7 sacks against the Browns a couple weeks prior. Now, that is Myles Garrett. That is the Browns. But we talked about like Hendrickson and how, great of a rusher he was. One of the most productive rushers in the league heading into the game. And for the last couple of weeks, I think maybe against the Titans, cool game plan. Can you do it again? To now have done it again and be trending in the right direction heading into playing the Ravens is wonderful. And I think that this offensive line has played much better. I don't know how much they're being blitzed, how difficult defenses are trying to make it for them, But as far as I'm aware, and really seeing it in person, it felt like Herbert had so much time to evaluate his options, in particular in that first half. I mean, it was play action, Will Dissly, play action or deep drop, Quentin Johnson. I mean, it was beautiful to watch Herbert, I don't know, have some time. And even if it wasn't there, okay, cool. Well, no one's really in my way. So I'm going to run for 30 yards. Like, just the offensive line has played so much better the last couple of weeks. I got to give them credit because it feels like for the first 8 weeks, giving them a hard time. Let's give them some flowers this week.
Yeah. Even if you include the Browns game, since the bye week, Justin Herbert has only been pressured on 32% of his dropbacks, which there are some quarterbacks who are at like 21% right now. Baker Mayfield, Tua Tagovailoa, who get the ball out incredibly fast. But 32% is very respectable. CJ Stroud right now is at 44%. Joe Burrow is at 40. Geno Smith is at 39. Lamar Jackson also at 39 for what it's worth. So the way that this offensive line has stepped up, it's been, again, not a ton of like great opponents. Obviously the Browns game was not super fun, but 32% is extremely respectable. And so this offensive line is slowly eliminating the stunt reps that have caused them a lot of problems. Zion Johnson did allow the sack on the first passing play of the game to Trey Hendrickson. That was basically it from the interior. Like you mentioned, it felt like watching the tape that Justin Herbert had all day on every single passing rep. And, we talked about the Rashawn Slater versus Hendrickson aspect of it. And Hendrickson beat him a couple of times, but he was basically a non-factor. And the Bengals defensive line is not great, but at the same time, they're still NFL players, right? And we've seen this team have not great performances against not great defensive lines like the Cardinals. Yes. So I thought they played fantastic. Joe Alt against Sam Hubbard was like just completely unfair, which again, this is the floor of Joe Alt. If you're a Sam Hubbard type of player, you ain't doing shit against Joe Alt. So it's just been, those two tackles are playing outstanding football. And Zion low-key has had the two best games of his career over the last 2 weeks. And Trey Pipkins had one of the highest grades of his career this week. So this offensive line, if they can keep doing this, man, we've just been kind of waiting for it, and it took way too long. But it seems like it's finally happening right now for this group, and they're finally starting to eliminate the head scratching errors, which is a credit to them, a credit to Mike Dillon and the coaching staff. Now they need to do it against a Ravens defensive line that is incredibly deep at the defensive tackle spot and has one of the best pass rushers in the league.
If this offensive line takes care of business against the Ravens and the Chargers win the game on Monday Night Football, I'm going to start looking for some very deep playoff tickets. That's for sure. Yes. If that's the offensive line that's about to roll into the postseason, and that's the Herbert we're getting, and the McConkey we're getting, and the defense we're getting, should be fun.
Yeah, should be fun. NSN asking about the Zion injury. So according to Jim Harbaugh, he was playing with a high ankle sprain. According to my eyes. Sunday? No, earlier to start the season. Did you not hear about this?
No, I did. I just thought you meant he was still playing hurt.
No, so he was playing supposedly with a high ankle sprain. According to my eyes, he was just not playing good. But, it is what it is. So we'll see. This is a huge test. This is a much bigger test than anything they faced over the last few weeks. So if they can pass this test, then it would be wonderful to see. But Nnamdi Madubuike is an insane test. The other aspect of the offensive line that I wanted to touch on, I think they actually blocked the run very well. And I was shocked watching the second half of how little they actually ran the football. Tucker Fisk, low-key, is like a revelation for them. He's been awesome. They were doing these, whenever they would get Fisk and Matlock out there, they were just mashing people. Like, it was some truly high-end run blocking from what we saw. And so, it is kind of a concern for me that they were just like, hey, like, we're not going to do this anymore. And Gus Edwards didn't play a single snap in the second half. So it was a little puzzling watching the tape, thinking like, okay, like, I'm watching this first half run game, and it was like, okay, that's a really good rep. Okay, that's a really good rep. Like the run blocking was outstanding in the first half. And there were a couple bad reps in the second half, like you have to be honest, but
Sure.
um, to end the game, they had an awesome blocked and executed run to get the J.K. Dobbins touchdown. So it was a bit of a head scratcher watching that, and I wanted to kind of wait and watch the tape to see, because live it didn't look like it was bad, but it didn't look like it was good. But to me, watching the tape, it looked like it was much better, and so it was encouraging, but at the same time confusing, because they just completely stopped running the football in the second half.
Yeah, that was very puzzling. So early in the game, they tried a couple of runs. They weren't great. And then I'm going, well, okay, maybe Herbert should throw it. And then they get up 20, or I should say 24-6. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, like you can run it now. It's what you're built for. It would have made perfect sense if at that point they said, yep, we're going to run it, especially with, I think at that time, maybe Fulton was in and out, and Hart, at least in the third quarter, was out at some point. So I'd have understood. They went, never mind, we're going to run it. Our corners are hurt. Let's just end this thing. But they passed it a ton. Gus Edwards had, I don't like, so the quote from Jim Harbaugh was, or not the quote, like Dobbins was the guy that was rolling in a great rhythm. So there's nothing injury related with Gus Edwards. They just gave him the one rushing attempt in the third quarter at 13 minutes and 23 seconds in the third quarter. And that was it. And that was really puzzling from a game script perspective, but also just like an efficiency perspective, because, you know, Edwards was, I think he was 5 carries, 25 yards or 26 yards heading into that final rep, that final rush. So it's not like he was doing terribly and then, okay, they're going to go to the hot hand. It's not like Dobbins was doing great either. You know, he had the run for 15 yards, which was great, but I think that was in the third or fourth quarter. So it's not like Dobbins was lighting it up to start the first half anyway. And we didn't get that big play until the very end of the fourth quarter. So I don't know what happened. On the one hand, Herbert was playing awesome in the first half. So maybe you go, do it again. But it wasn't working. So
not the worst logic.
No, it's definitely not the worst logic, because Herbert and the line, they were carving up the Bengals defense. So totally fine. But I was definitely surprised by the lack of involvement.
Yeah. So I just you needed to point that out, because the run blocking was, I thought, much better than what people were kind of talking about online. What I felt like during the game, you know, some good reps for sure, but there were a few times where they just were completely just like moving the entire line. So it was great to see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Tyler, anything else that is real or fake that you want to touch on?
I think we got most of it, honestly. We haven't, I guess, said it, but shout out to Joey Bosa for a nice return to form too.
Yeah. I'm not super optimistic about this upcoming matchup, but he played great this past week. 8 pressures is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly looking more and more like himself. I think it's a good sign that he played 55 snaps and was able to play basically like a normal workload for him. So
yeah,
getting Khalil Mack this week would be fantastic. But yeah, Ronnie Stanley is a very different beast right now than what Cody Ford was. All right, we'll get to some of these super chats before we head out. Dark Samus 100 with a super sticker here, and then a second one, and wants to know, are we rolling with Trey Pipkins next year? What are your thoughts there?
I still don't know. I think you need to see the rest of these games. If he plays like he plays in his good moments and like the past game, yeah, probably. But if he's not, then you don't.
Yeah, I mean, he played well. He did injure his ankle again. Like there were several times where I thought he was just going to be like down for the count. So we'll see what happens there. They did put Jamari in on the goal line stand, and he had a great block on the touchdown. So we'll see what happens here. But I don't know if the Chargers would just outright cut him as much as they would just kind of bring in competition, because they don't really they don't gain a ton of capital, and it's not like they need the space to they don't need $6 million extra in space by cutting him. I think they can keep him and put him into the swing tackle role, but we'll see. Super chat from Anthony Navarro just with a let's go. We appreciate that. Joe Cruz, can we all just support Daniel Popper? He is so fair. Even last year, Now the Bengals had to have that game, and the new Chargers ripped it away from them. So fun. Yeah, man, the Daniel Popper stuff is pretty confusing to me. Last year, everybody loved him. He was doing a great job because he was asking the hard questions with Brandon Staley, and he did an awesome job covering that era. And now that he's kind of like pushing back a little bit against Jim Harbaugh for similar questions and similar issues, everybody hates him. So I don't get it. I would encourage people to not push away the best beat reporter that we've ever had covering the Chargers. So that's my take on Daniel Popper.
So in regards to that, just specifically Daniel Popper as a reporter and writer, like, yeah, let's not usher him away because you can go read other stuff and it's not maybe as necessarily as good. Chris Rim is doing thank God they got Chris Rim because he's doing a good job too. But yeah, this whole Daniel Popper thing, and like now we dislike him because he's asking the tough questions, or that he says the words like blown lead. Like, who cares? Like, get laid and just like like just come on, guys. Like, what? I don't care. I don't care what you call it. I don't care. Just he's doing his job. You don't like it, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we went through like a legit like 5-year period where there was just like nobody good to read. And now that the Chargers have a few good reporters, people are trying to push away one of the best of them. I think the best, but it is what it is. Either way, he's doing a wonderful job covering the team. Like, read his stuff, pay for the Athletic. It's worth it. He's doing a great job. And I agree with Joe. The rest of it was great to watch the Chargers rip away that win. It was fantastic.
I did think they were going to lose about 4 separate times during that game, though.
Yeah, I said on the show on Sunday when Justin fumbled, I thought the game was over. I was like, yeah. I was in my chair with my hands on my head. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Okay, next one here from Richard. If you think about it, Jim is already in year 2 of the rebuild based on how much he's getting out of the 2023 draft class. That's 2 very productive drafts there.
I love that. It feels like you're acquiring new players. I mean, Deion Henley going from, I don't know, 40 snaps last year to I want him in the Pro Bowl is insane. So yeah, I love that way of looking at it. I haven't thought of it that way.
Yeah, and like we had a ton of questions about this group heading into the season. We knew that Thule was good, and we knew that Darius Davis was a good returner. That was it. And Quentin has improved tremendously, and Deion is a star linebacker, and Scott Matlock is a starting fullback, which tell yourself that from a year ago, you would have said you were crazy. But it's a great point. Those guys are all helping tremendously with this current season as well.
Yeah.
Crescendo wants to know if we can talk about free agent interior offensive linemen. He's fiending for that. We'll dive in. A lot is going to change for the Chargers as well as the rest of the league. But Trey Smith is a free agent. Ryan Kelly is a free agent. They have options, and this is a group where they can definitely go get some upgrades in free agency this year.
Yeah, if they want to go full Harbaugh and spend $50 million on 2 interior linemen, fine.
Tip of the spear, baby. Nicholas says, imagine this team with Higgins and one in a first or second round tight end.
Yeah, that would be nasty. By the way, T. Higgins is way bigger and taller in person. Not that I was like right there on the field, but watching him on the game, I'm going, and Cam Hart's right there for some reference too. T. Higgins is huge. I did not know he was that big of a guy.
Yeah, he's a great player. I will be thrilled if the Chargers signed him. I think he's a wide receiver 1 on like 90% of the teams in the league right now. I don't know if the Chargers are going to spend money to get him, like, because this is a like $35 million potential player, and I don't know if that kind of fits with how Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz want to build this team out. So we'll see. But T. Higgins on the Chargers with Ladd and Colston Loveland or Tyler Warner, whoever tight end they take, that'd be nasty. Last one here from Clinton. Wild double standard for Burrow versus Herbert by some media after this win. Zero credit to Justin for 2 A++ clutch throws on that final drive. Even claims that Dobbins bailed Herbert out. If we keep winning, they'll eat crow. And a huge super chat also. I just noticed $20. So really appreciate Clinton here. It is funny how like this season of Joe Burrow, like people are talking about him like statistically putting up MVP numbers and he leads the league in passing, but they're 4-7 and nobody really is giving him any kind of flack for that. Where Justin Herbert throws for 5,000 yards in 2021 and the Chargers go 9-8 and they're like, fuck that guy, he's not a winner. Like I don't get it. And I understand Joe Burrow went to a Super Bowl, but they haven't really done anything since that point, and that Super Bowl run is very fluky if we're being real. So it is a double standard. The media picks and chooses their guys, but weirdly, like Emmanuel Acho is now on the Chargers bandwagon. So I don't know, man. The media flips they flip flop all the time. So it is frustrating though for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like Justin Herbert is getting more like vindication to being proven right or proven to be a great player as time passes. Like his resume and the way he's playing right now, it's aging very well. I mean, CJ Stroud, they were crowning him ahead of Justin Herbert in the quarterback rankings heading into this season. It is not easy to do what Justin Herbert has been doing every single year. Like, yeah, you can be great as a rookie. Can you do it again? Can you maintain that consistency? Can you be better? It's very difficult when your defense sucks and your team sucks and you don't win games. Can you be good? And then, so I think it's almost like media is starting to figure out like, oh my God, like you can play really well at quarterback and lose games. Because there's some great quarterback like Burrow, he's playing great football. I watched him live. Dude was awesome. They lost that game because they scored 34 on the defense. And, we're so used to seeing those kinds of games from Justin Herbert. I'm used to seeing the opposite ends on them. So, I'm happy for whatever reason people are starting to see Justin Herbert for who he really is, whether it's the emotions, the clips, the wins, the throws, whatever. Everyone's starting to see what we've been seeing for years, which is awesome.
Yeah. And things will change, right? Again, we talked about this earlier. The Chargers are on such a positive track right now as an organization. If they get where they can potentially get to in the next couple of years, then nobody's going to remember, obviously, the previous era, hopefully. Anyways.
They'll give them shit. If they lose their playoff game this year, the first one, they'll give him shit.
Yeah.
So 100%. They'll get right back on it. So he's got to win one.
Yeah. A couple more jumped in here. Alan says no to T. Higgins because he doesn't give effort when he doesn't get the ball. Well, he gets the ball a lot, so I don't know. This is like 85% of NFL receivers, so this doesn't really impact my opinion.
Not Lad McConkey, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, not Lad. He's different. And then Curtis says Kevin Zeitler or Osa for the Bolts next year. We've been on the Osa train.
Yeah.
I have not been following Kevin Zeitler a ton. I don't even know if he's a free agent next year. But that kind of player, definitely I'm on board with.
Yeah, I'm all on board. If we get to a point in the draft, especially when the Chargers make the postseason and they're picking in the 20s at that point, I'm for a defensive tackle. Obviously, it has to match. We'll get there. But I would love to see this team with a true pass rushing defensive tackle, as 80% of the league has their own guy. Would love for the Chargers to find their own.
Yeah, Puna is doing great relative to who Puna is, but there are defensive tackles out there that have like 55 pressures right now.
It's insane.
So Puna with 16 is very cool. I love it, but there are certainly different levels to that.
Right.
So all right. I think that is going to do it for us today. We will be back here on Thursday with our next preview of week 12. I can't believe we're in week 12 already. This football season is flying by. It's amazing what happens when your team is winning, because last season I was ready for it to be over at this point. So Monday Night Football against the Ravens, the Harbaugh Bowl, massive game. If the Chargers are able to win this, that gives them a leg up for the 5 seed in the playoffs, which would be huge. So tons of storylines, great matchups all across the board. Can't wait to dive into that. As always, make sure you are subscribed wherever you are listening or watching this podcast. That continue to help grow the show. Like, comment, review, everything like that. We do really appreciate it. This has been another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. We'll see you next time. As always, bolt up.